This is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, also known as PCCEP, and I will hand it to our full committee chairs, Kip and Pastor Weisner, to get us started.
I guess I'll get started. My name is Kip Silverman. I use he, him pronouns, and I am co-chair of PCCEP along with Pastor Weisner. Pastor Weisner, I'll pass it on to you.
Good afternoon or good smoky evening to everyone, and that is not cannabis, but we do have forest fire. I'm Pastor Robin Weisner, and it's great to see everyone today. I will pass it on to Vanessa.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vanessa Perry, a PCCEP committee member, she, her, and I'll pass it on to Tia.
Hello, my name is Tia Palafox. I'm the co-chair of the Community and Engagement Subcommittee. And thank you. Yes, it says smoky and hot. I'm trying to see who's next. I can't. Oh, I see Conrad. Conrad, can you go next?
Thanks, Tia. I'm Conrad Hewlin. He, him pronouns. I have the privilege of serving on the Policy and Reform Subcommittee. And pass it over to Gabby.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm the chair of the Policy Committee. I'll pass it to Jorge.
Hey everyone, Jorge Sanchez Bautista, PCCEP member. Glad to be here. I'm gonna pass it over to
I see Leslie.
It took me a minute.
All good. Hi everyone, Leslie Martinez. I'm a co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. My pronouns are she, hers. And am I the last one?
I believe so.
Okay, cool.
So at this time we can hear introductions from city staff, PPB, independent monitor folks, so feel free to just jump in after me. I'm Dory Grubinski, PCCEP Program Manager. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Iman Gassemi. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator. Happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. Liz Taylor, she, her, PCCEP Program Coordinator.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mark Smith. I'm the lead monitor from the independent monitoring team. Thanks very much for having me and letting me observe tonight's meeting.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Jackson. I'm a captain with the Portland Police Bureau. I'm currently assigned to the training division.
Christopher Taft, he, him, Mayor Wilson's office.
I'm Jordan Cox. I am just a citizen of Portland.
My name is Mac. I work with the Councilor Canal's office in the community engagement.
Great. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. And
Sylvia Zinga, sir, and I'm a past member of Training Advisory Council, and I'm sitting in it as a community member.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we can go back to those slides, please. And Leslie, would you like to read our community agreements?
Yep. All right. Listen actively and respectfully. Share airtime. Be present and open to new information and perspectives. Assume positive intent. Respect each other. Respect the group. Speak your own truth. Communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully. Ask questions to clarify. Call out bias. And be okay with ambiguity.
All right. I'm back to you, Kip and Pastor Weisner.
I guess I'll do the overview. So thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate you. We're going to start with updates. Then we have the Inspector General from Seattle here to talk about their office and what they do and how things were set up. Excited for that conversation. So thank you very much, Lisa, for being here. We're going to the public safety presentation and Q&A. That is the mayor's meeting. What is public
That is
safety?
all one. That's all one line there.
Oh, it's
Just
all
one agenda
for
item. Yeah.
public I am sorry. There, I thought we had we were going to talk a little bit. That's not broken out. That's in updates. Never mind.
Yes, correct.
So
Yeah.
thank you. I had a long day at work, so my apologies. So we'll be talking in the updates about our proposed meeting with the mayor and want to get some input from folks. We'll have Lisa talking about the inspector general in Seattle, and then we'll be open for public comment and wrap this up in about 2 hours. So. So I guess I'm doing this.
I can help out, Chip, if you're
Okay,
not
yeah,
doing
sure.
it.
Do you want to go through the status conference hearing debrief, Pastor Wisner?
Sure, I will be glad to. The status brief conference, Judge Simon denied the DOJ's request to hand over the Portland Police Bureau's protest footage on the base of viewpoint discriminations. Second bullet point is that discussions about the independent monitor findings that the body camera implementation is falling short, low review rates and incomplete documentations. The monitor also found that the deadly force incidents were being routed to the training division rather than reviewed by commanders, raising concerns about accountability and correction action. The discussion of the major delay in building the voters approved civil oversight system, the Community Board for Police Accountability, the amici and PCCEP and members of the public testified support of the independent inspection general to ensure Seattle's agreement reform continues after the oversight leaves, which is where we are today. Any questions from anybody about the hearing?
Yeah, I'll add just one thing, our public statement that we helped craft together, and I'm really appreciative of everybody's input, was well received. So thank you for helping me sound good.
And I see Jorge, and I'll come after him.
Welcome for sounding good, Kip. Yeah, no, one question that I had was regarding the fourth bulletin point about the discussion of major delays. What were the key things that were that were brought up about the delay? Did Judge Simon say anything?
Looking at discussion for the major delay for building the voters' approval.
Yeah, the CBPA.
He did not really elaborate into that, other than I believe Heidi gave a more of a update on where they were at in the areas of one, getting a director hired, as well as, I know where you're going, Jorge, but no, it didn't. Discussion did not lead to any things that was going wrong in the areas of what most people might feel about what's happening with the CBPA.
Okay.
I can add that this often it comes up in a similar way in a lot of the hearings where, because the CBPA was added as one of the settlement agreement remedies in 2021, it comes up in compliance conversations because I can't really speak definitively on how this will work, but there are some questions about if that section can be found in compliance, given like the status of where that board is at or that system is at. So I think it came up kind of in that context, if that makes sense.
Who was that point that you just mentioned? Who was that brought by?
I don't believe it was raised by any specific person. It's a part of the monitor report as it always is. And I think it just came up in that context.
Okay. That was my only question.
Gabby?
Thank you. I was not aware about the body camera implementation falling short and what's going on with the deadly force incidents. And I just wanted to say that might be something that we'd like to discuss as a group going in the future, in the near future. So just bringing it up now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, anything else here before we move to the next update? Okay, moving on. And Kip and Pastor Weisner.
Sure, I could take the next one. So PCEP co-chairs and staff are meeting with Mayor Wilson on August 7th. Mayor Wilson and his staff. This is an ongoing internal standing meeting that we have with the mayor to provide updates on PCEP and ask questions, convey requests on behalf of the committee. I'm reading the slide. I hate reading slides, but it's useful. Our plans currently include updates on our community engagement strategy and discussing the fall event with Mayor Wilson, which we've had some discussion on so far. Is there anything the PCEP members would like us to convey in this discussion? And we can talk about some of it here. If you don't have thoughts right now, you could always hit us up on Teams or email as well. So, and it's a short meeting, so don't be long-winded. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, concerns, things that they want us to address with the mayor, please let us know. Okay, if there's no, oh, Barb.
Just a quick question. I'm wondering how often your standing meeting is planning to be, like monthly or quarterly or what have you?
That's a good question. I believe we're supposed to be meeting twice a year formally, but I've also heard possibly quarterly. So I'm not entirely sure. Dory, do you have a clarification on that?
Yeah, there's no hard requirement for this one with the sort of internal check-ins. The hard requirement is the 2 annual public meetings,
Okay.
which most people are familiar with. Mayor Wheeler previously had committed to meeting with the committee every quarter. And I believe Mayor Wilson intends to maintain that relationship or cadence, but you know, obviously sometimes with scheduling, it gets a little, yeah, but I think somewhere between quarterly and twice a year. And they seem to also kind of correspond with these planning sessions for the larger events. So sorry, that's not a definitive answer, but.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Barb. Let's move on to the next slide. So we have subcommittee updates. Gabby, are you ready to give an update on policy and reform?
Yes, thank you. So our next meeting it's always the 4th Wednesday of the month. Our next meeting will be on the 26th of August. We will be going over the STOPS data report that just came out recently. We had our last meeting. We had a discussion about the report and kind of formulated some questions that we wanted to talk to PPB about, as well as hopefully the analysts who put the report together, and discussing not just the data, but the benchmarking, because overall it was found that no racial disparity was found in the report, or excuse me, in stops in general. And so we're just sort of gonna ask about how that is measured and what that looks like, and talk about transparency around resourcing, etc. And that's going to be our next meeting this month. Our following meeting in September likely is going to be in regards to the use of force report. And then the following meeting is going to be about the discipline process. So that's still the plan. So thank you.
Right on.
And I can take the update for the community engagement subcommittee, and Tia can fill in anything else. But yeah, so we have been very active, thanks to Iman and you know, the staff support in being able to get out there and do a lot of and attend a lot of events. Primarily Iman has been attending the events, but at all of them we developed a survey that we give out to people, just kind of like in conversation, so that we can collect feedback. I was actually at the National Night Out that was on the 29th, last Friday, with Iman, and so it was a really good opportunity. I think we collected, I want to say like over 70 surveys there just in like the couple of hours that I was there. I don't know if Iman has like the full numbers, but we're really on track to collect a lot of surveys, which is great because you know, the proactive approach that we've agreed upon really really relies on us collecting sufficient community feedback. So ahead of the steering committee, we plan to all get together as a community engagement subcommittee, digest, discuss, and then have our report prepared for that steering committee. That's kind of the date and time is TBD, but for community engagement committee members, subcommittee members, please keep an eye out for an invite to ask your availability, because we, as much as possible, would like to make that a collective effort. And another shout out. So like one of the things that we're doing as a subcommittee, instead of having our regular scheduled meetings, we're trying to pivot to being a little bit more in the community. So for subcommittee members, that's really important, but we definitely want to extend that opportunity to be at events for the larger committee. And the National Night Out is a really good opportunity for folks because they take place in districts. So I know I put it in the chat a little bit, the recommendation, but if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, if there's a National Night Out that is happening in your district, I highly encourage PCCEP members to attend, whether they are on the community engagement subcommittee or not. But yeah, anything to fill in, Tia or Iman?
Good job, Leslie. I was just going to say that we worked on this survey together and created a great one with some good questions for both adults and youth, but they'll check off their age. So we'll be able to see what age group that the surveys are coming in from, and we'll be able to make a good report from that. And then I know Iman will talk about what happened with the Dream Big event and the new date for that. And I'll be attending the National Night Out this Friday.
Great.
Lots of things happening. Thank you.
Perfect segue, Tia, because I did want to just very quickly flash everyone the survey that Iman and members are kind of conducting out in the field at all different kinds of tabling events, both public safety and not. And so we can just scroll through some of the questions here. So we developed this because as we're building our community engagement arm of PCCEP, we want to collect usable data for you all to use in committee. So again, we're gathering this from all sorts of communities, all sorts of events, and we will synthesize these results and then turn them into usable data for the rest of the subcommittee to integrate into recommendations, or even you know, help inform the direction of your research or whatever it may be. So I'm looking forward to getting this info to you. Just wanted to kind of show you more tangibly what the community engagement subcommittee has been working on. Yeah, any questions about this?
This looks great.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're gonna wrap up like the first quarter of kind of really being out in the field with this, and I'm excited to hand these off to the team. And then I'll pass it to Iman to just briefly preview some events that are coming up this week. If anybody wants to plug in, including members of the public, you are more than welcome to join us.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much, Dory. Yeah, we're super excited of really the events coming up here. Leslie, thanks for joining me at the National Night Out event. It was at Directors Park. It was a wonderful time over there, and we had closer to about 60 individuals, that 58 to be exact, that we were able to get during that time. So we were very delighted in that. As for events that are coming up this week, we have another National Night Out event coming up this Friday at Normal Del Park. So that'll be from 4 to 7, I believe. So if you're not doing anything, come on through. Then the following day, at Saturday, will be at D1 for the D1 picnic with Counselor Avalos' office. And that's going to be at Park Lane Park. And then on Sunday will be a D2 picnic with Counselor Canal's office at McCoy Park. And that, I believe, is from noon to 3. So we're very lucky to be able to do D3, D1, D2 all in consecutive days. And so we'll have tables there, we'll have the survey there, and so we'll be able to get great feedback from the community. So I'm very much looking forward to it. So if any of you all around, please message me and we'd love to have you there. And as Tia kind of mentioned, because of weather, we had to postpone the event, and then some emergency happened with the organizer. We had to postpone it again. So as of right now, on August 18th, coming up here in about 13 days, we're very much looking forward to it. We'll have at the Dream Big Plaza on 9th and Taylor, we're going to have our community engagement event that's focused for youth that we've talked about here before in past meetings. So we're very much looking forward to these great events coming up here. So yeah, so thank you all so much. And yeah, that's all I have over here.
All right. Any more questions on updates before we move into the main agenda?
Not questions, but just something you mentioned it, Dory, and I meant to mention it as like more thoroughly. But like right now, the events that Iman has been finding and we've attended, a lot of them have to do with like that are city led or something like that. Or community safety based and things like that. And while those are great events, we are definitely trying to expand our pool of events that we're attending to just like more events where a large swath of the community are there that are not already embedded in these topics, because we want to get the day-to-day folks just opinion and like feedback. So we've talked about doing things like attending movies at the park, like those types of events where it's just community coming together for like a fun thing. So wanted to make sure to note that, yeah, we're trying to diversify the events we attend.
Thanks, Leslie. Gabby?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to plug the Instagram, because if you're looking for dates and times, it's not going to be on the website, but that stuff is kept up on the Instagram, right?
It's on.
It looks like it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
But
if you're
yeah.
curious, like, because some stuff, these things come up between sessions, and you can always check out PCCEP's Instagram to see if they're going to be at events.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I think we are ready to move into the main agenda here, so I'll pass it back to Kip and Pastor Reisner to introduce this.
Yeah. So a little bit of background. As everyone here is likely aware, the settlement agreement process started in 2012, was settled into an actionable agreement in 2014. We've had different permutations of oversight and reporting and independent monitors over the years. As most of the articles of the settlement agreement have been resolved, and there still are some to be resolved, we have had multiple people, especially Debbie, come to our meetings and advocate for solutions that are going to carry on beyond the settlement agreement and the independent monitor. And from the steering committee that we had earlier this year, through multiple conversations here in PCEP, plus almost a unanimous ask through the update hearing in Judge Simon's court 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. That the direction that we are leaning towards right now is having an independent inspector general who sits outside of the Portland Police Bureau and could pick up the work of auditing and evaluating the efforts of the PPB to their policies and directives once the settlement agreement is finally completed. And being that there's likely another possibly 2 years at least before we get beyond the end of the settlement agreement, we know things move very, very slowly. So with the city, so getting that our understanding of what we're looking for and want to ask for, and likely make a recommendation to the mayor and the PPB going forward. Somebody's not muted. That we want to start having a conversation now about what does this look like and how is it implemented around the nation. And Dory reached out to Seattle, and Lisa Judge was kind enough to join us tonight to talk about the Seattle Office of Inspector General, and we'll talk about hopefully talk about a little bit of the history, how it came about from, I believe, their consent decree, and implementation on the work they do. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Inspector General Lisa Judge, and if somebody could give her sharing control.
I was going to ask.
Oh yeah, please, Pastor Wisner.
In our discussion about the Inspector Attorney General, there is a terminology and a buzzword about what that looks like. I'm hoping that we at PCCEP will be informed more in how the model would sustain a look from different types. And I'm hoping where those of us who don't know as long as I've been doing it and in the conversation with it will expand their areas of research, deep research, because it's generally about the long term after the effect of what we do as PCCEP. And it's very important that what we understand in setting this around a recommendation, that we fully understand the back of all of this from around different parts of what inspector generals deal with and the office. The conversation should, in areas of hope, is how the city will be able to budget, how the money it takes to operate the offices, the staffing. There's a lot other than just hearing about what it actually is for us who are needing to make sure, similar like those who are familiar with the CBPA, the delays that could do. We need a successful exiting plan from the settlement agreement. Thank you for giving me that moment to talk to the
Absolutely
perspective of that.
Well, good evening, everybody. Is it time for me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Great. Hi, I'm Lisa Judge, Inspector General for Public Safety up here in Seattle. I think it would probably be helpful to just chat for a couple minutes before I start sharing the PowerPoint. Pastor, I appreciate your comments there, and it is definitely the long game that you have to play here, and community has got to be, a huge piece of building something that's going to provide the kind of oversight that an inspector general's office might provide for you. And when it was conveyed to me that you all wanted to have a conversation, it was like they want a quick presentation and maybe a little bit of discussion, but I just want to make it clear that I'm happy to be a resource for you. You can kind of keep coming back to the well. I'm happy to help you kind of vision what it is that would be good for your city, and share some of my experiences, some of the pitfalls, some of the things that I think are important and I wish had been built into our system so that, you know, you all have opportunities where perhaps we didn't have those kinds of opportunities. So I'm happy to be an ongoing resource for y'all as you move through this. So I will go ahead. Any questions or comments
No,
so
but
far?
thank you for that. Appreciate
All
it.
right, I'm going to attempt to share some materials with you. Let's see. Open it up here. And I won't be able to see if I'm sharing or not, so you guys will have to tell me if it's successful. Did anything get shared? There we go. Share.
Not yet here, but oh, there we go.
Okay. Okay, so can you see a PowerPoint?
We can see us. We don't see the PowerPoint yet.
Uh-oh.
Sometimes, yeah, you may have shared your whole screen rather than clicking on a specific program. Like sometimes the tray will show you.
How about
If
that?
that makes sense. There you go.
we go.
All right, let me start the presentation. And that means I can't see you all at all. So if you have questions or anything, just kind of chime in and interrupt me.
We can see you, Lisa.
Yeah, I know, but I can't see you guys. I can only see my presentation. So if you have anything, so what I'm doing is this is a presentation I did a couple years ago for our public safety committee, and it's got a lot of kind of the background information about my office. So I'm just kind of using an existing PowerPoint here to walk you through the Seattle accountability system and OIG in particular. So essentially, we have a very similar, I think, kind of history that brings us to this, like y'all do with a consent decree. And Seattle's began with a DOJ investigation in 2011. A consent decree entered into between the city and Department of Justice in 2012. And for a number of years, immediately after the consent decree, there was the development of sort of an external internal affairs agency called the Office of Police Accountability. That's the OPA that you see up here. They're the part of our tripartite accountability system up here that deals with individual allegations of police officer misconduct. During the consent decree, I think in like 2016, maybe, the Community Police Commission was developed as a creature of the consent decree to infuse the court proceedings with community voice, to create a feedback loop with community. And then in 2017, the city of Seattle passed an ordinance that formalized these three bodies. It created the Office of Inspector General and put us all together in sort of a three-headed accountability system that has some overlap, but gives us individual mandates as having a piece of the accountability system. The Office of Inspector General is charged with systemic oversight and also with kind of taking what the court and the monitor did and making sure that there is sustained accountability that transcends when a consent decree comes to a close and continues on with those reforms and kind of keeps the ball moving in the right direction. Any questions so far? And I can share this PowerPoint with you if you guys want any of the content of it. So we were developed to help ensure fairness and integrity in the policing system as a whole. And you can see there that we were created to oversee ongoing fidelity to organizational reforms implemented pursuant to the consent decree. So basically to keep the consent decree reforms going and not to lose the progress that we gained under the consent decree. So this is just kind of our vision for our office. When I was hired in 2018, I was the first inspector general in Seattle. So I kind of came in and stood up the office. And I came from Tucson, Arizona. I was a general counsel for the Tucson Police Department for a little over 23 years, and I wasn't an inspector general. So one of the things that was really important for me was to develop an office that was based on neutrality. I think objectivity is kind of sometimes maybe a loaded word, but to have this commitment to independence. And so I made a decision right at the outset to use what are called the generally accepted government auditing standards for my audit function. So we had very strict criteria for how to do audits, how to maintain independence and objectivity. And so we kind of have built that in to our process. But there is no accountability system that I think can be successful if it's not responsive to community concerns, and if it's not really operating for the purpose of making government transparent, making things that a police department does transparent, being responsive to community issues and community desires for police accountability. So you have to have community perspectives baked into the work that you're doing. And it's really critical when you're building this that you have somebody who understands law enforcement. And I came into it having been a lawyer inside a police department. So I knew, like, kind of, where in a police department the skeletons are buried, what kinds of things you look for, where there are frequently problems in police departments. And so, I had an understanding of also the very technical parts of this job too. Questions so far? This is just a sample of current org chart. Actually, I don't know if it's current or not, but it's pretty current. When this office was created on paper in 2017, we had 8 positions, and we've now grown to 23 positions. And, Pastor, I think you were talking about like the kinds of resources that it takes to really run a meaningful office of inspector general, and it's a lot. You have to be thinking about what kinds of products you want to produce for community, how you want to turn over whatever rocks you're going to turn over in the police department, and what it's going to take in terms of having the right staff setup and the right mix of people to be able to do that effectively. I've got auditors. I've got people who focus on standards and compliance, so kind of the ongoing federal monitoring type aspects of our work. And then we also have oversight of our police accountability office. So I've got investigators who make sure that the OPA investigations of misconduct are thorough, they're not biased, that they're timely. And if there are conflicts with OPA members who are alleged to have committed misconduct, we conduct those conflict investigations. So it does take a lot.
Lisa, thanks so
Yeah.
much, Bar. I just wanted to bring up, maybe we could talk about the end. You said there's like, the rocks to look under,
Yeah.
and maybe we could just talk more about that when you're done with your presentation.
Completely, yeah. Just if I don't remember, remind me, and I'm happy to talk about that.
That's good. Thank you.
Yep. So this is kind of the way it has broken down for us, how we divvy up our own body of work at OIG. We, as I mentioned, have an audit group that does yellow book audits, the ones that use the generally accepted government auditing standards. And we also do, audits take time, they're very labor and resource intensive, but we also sometimes do what we call a review or a non-audit project where you have a tighter turnaround, maybe it's not as big of a subject matter area, or there's a need for kind of a quick response to community. And I would talk about an example that just cropped up with the tragic mass shooting that we had here, but I don't want to get out in front of the mayor. And we have our own Mayor Wilson up here. So I can't talk about that, but we have the ability to both do these really comprehensive audits that take a while and to be flexible and responsive to things that are happening in our community that are more emergent. So I mentioned that we oversee OPA. We have folks that do policy review and best practices. And I've got a couple of incredible data scientists that work for me. So we've got the ability to do a lot of data analysis. And one of the great things that Seattle built into our authorities and that we were able to bargain with the union is we have full and unfettered access to all of the systems, everything at SPD. So we have back end access to data. We don't have to request it. We can just go right in and do whatever analysis we need to.
Lisa, question?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm gonna try to say this without getting you into the areas in front of the mayor, say. But in the thought of that, would that be similar to areas of where delaying an investigation is able now to be more in the time frame that should be done and followed? Is that the language you were just using so much just now?
Well, without kind of revealing too much, there was a lot of community concern after the mass shooting that happened here about delays in information being pushed out to the public. And so we plan to take a look at what happened. Like why weren't certain emergency systems used quickly? Why wasn't information pushed out? What caused those delays? So that's very broadly what we're going to do a review of. And as you might imagine, you want to do a review quickly enough so that if there are issues you need to address right now, so that if God forbid something happens in the near future, you've learned some lessons and you've fixed those problems so you don't have a repeat of that. But you also want to be careful and thorough. So we have the ability to do a review like that and get some answers for the public and push those things out and hopefully make some changes so that we can push information out for public safety more quickly in a situation like that. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I forgot you couldn't
In the
see
short term, we can
my-
talk about it more later. Happy to do that too.
No, I just that was crystal clear.
Okay. Yeah, and you can see the bar here, like underlining all of the work that we do is communication and community outreach. If you're doing projects because, like, if I'm doing work because it's interesting to me or uh, I'm intellectually curious about something, but people don't care about it, then it's just a waste of taxpayer money. So you have to be figuring out what's important to your community and creating an effective feedback loop so that it's not wasted effort on anyone's part. And communicating about audits and inspector general stuff is not easy with community. And one of the ways that I think I would have done things differently is we would have had appropriate staffing in the area of community engagement to help us communicate our work and to communicate with community more effectively right from the outset. We started with a little staff and we really focused on kind of the meat and potatoes work, and then we didn't have the back end developed to fully communicate that work, and that was something I wish I could have done differently.
Lisa, does the police department have its own policy review, or does the policy review and recommendations come directly or only from your office?
So SPD does have a policy unit. They have staffed it with sworn folks, which, I think it's helpful to have officers helping draft policy because they can take their experience on the street and with the practicalities of the job and make sure that the policies are going to translate into practice. But I also think that if you're using people who don't have some formal policy experience to develop policy, you're going to get what you get. And so yes, they have a policy unit. It's not staffed well because they've had some staffing issues, and it's been more important to have officers out on the street. And they're sworn people who aren't necessarily policy wonks. And so we do whatever we can to help them out. If we can assist with research or looking at emerging practices from other departments. We work pretty closely with their policy folks to lend our expertise and our assistance, and that's kind of how it goes down right now.
Okay, thank you.
So this says recent OIG products. They're no longer recent. This was 2 years ago, but we did an audit of how SPD was implementing new laws and rules around legal counsel for folks under 18 for kids. We have mandates to monitor how SPD collects and uses intelligence information. So that's political affiliations, sexual practices is how one of them is defined, things like that. So we audit what they collect and how they use it, and just get rid of it once it's done. We did a traffic stop enforcement work group where we got SPD to deprioritize certain traffic violations that were civil in nature and weren't in any way, going to compromise safety on the streets, but had the effect of bringing people and law enforcement officers into contact with each other less frequently when it wasn't necessary. And recently, we just did a follow-up report to that. So that project is still ongoing. And this was back when we were still under the consent decree. Our consent decree was terminated by the federal court last fall. And so we formally took over responsibilities from the federal monitor. But this was back when we were demonstrating to the federal court that we could do the work of the monitor. So I think I'm going to just push through this. I'm sure y'all don't want a super long presentation.
I actually would like to hear about your surveillance priorities.
Oh yeah, 100%. You want me to talk about that now?
If you
Take the
would like
time
to
if you
now or
need.
later.
Yeah, so there is an ordinance requirement in Seattle that, and I don't know if you know anything about our surveillance ordinance, but it's very comprehensive. It's recently been streamlined a bit, but when I first started, essentially how surveillance technologies were regulated and evaluated in Seattle is Seattle took the first step of cataloging everything that could be considered surveillance. And that's everything from binoculars to, what you would like automatic license plate readers and things like that. So it's a huge array of all kinds of things that are capable of observing the kind of daily, going about of people and recording it or being able to observe those activities. So they made a huge master list, and then they started going one by one, doing evaluations of them, and then going through an approval process where the Seattle City Council would formally approve their use, even though they were currently being used and had been used. We would need like a probably half-day retreat to talk about our crazy surveillance ordinance. But in a nutshell, my office was charged with doing evaluations, and there's a template of things that we're required to look at in the ordinance for every approved technology that the Seattle Police Department was using. And it's due every September. So every September, we have kind of a schedule of the technologies that we're going to look at, and we assess them on, I think it's like 5 or 6 different aspects of things, including like impacts on civil liberties, complaints generated, how much it costs, just an overview of how it's used, when it's used, what the systems are. So we do a pretty comprehensive look at all of the surveillance technologies that have been approved by the council. And then you probably have heard recently, Seattle has engaged in a pilot project to use CCTV cameras in certain areas and to create a real-time crime center. So we have an obligation under that particular ordinance to do an evaluation of the pilot and to evaluate, and this is really hard to do, the effectiveness of cameras in terms of solving cases that where there's use of the real-time crime center. Was that helpful?
Thank you so much. That's very great info.
Yeah, that's its own presentation for sure. But if questions come up when I'm done about surveillance, I'm happy to take that on too. And one of the things I would say is that the consent decree and everybody's focus was largely on patrol actions, uses of force, supervisors in the field, how officers out in the field are trained. Everything was focused on patrol. And so when I mentioned earlier about, knowing what rocks to turn over, like there are so many things in terms of investigations, in terms of solve rates for crimes, how domestic violence and sexual assault crimes are investigated, bias that's not solely patrol officer based. Like there are just tons of things that were not really getting a lot of attention. So we've tried to maintain a work schedule that continues to assess sort of the core areas of concern that were in the consent decree, but also then start applying that to the agency and on a broader level. So some of the stuff that's in this PowerPoint is still largely patrol focused because we were still in the consent decree. This just, I think I've already mentioned this. This is just how our OPA classification and investigation review process goes, and some of the things that we do in that aspect of our work. These are some of the projects that we had for that particular team in the office a couple years ago. Sorry that I'm using an outdated process or PowerPoint. One of the things that we've done that I think is incredibly innovative, and we started it in 2020 after the kind of riots and things that we had here after the murder of George Floyd. We felt like it was really important to bring the police department and community members into a room to really talk about what things contributed to the systemic breakdown that led to the Chaz Chop being created, sustained protests over a period of months, incredible numbers of uses of force, complaints against officers, incredible public mistrust and dissatisfaction with government and public safety. Like there were a lot of things that were going on, as we all know, in that summer, because I think y'all were kind of in a very similar space. So we first started with data. We got as many data points as we could with OPA complaints, newspaper articles, things from social media, use of force reports, everything we could do. We aggregated it all, mapped it out, and then took the days where we had peaks of all of those things and broke those down into particular incidents that we wanted to review with community members and police to figure out what factors contributed to those terrible outcomes and what we could fix upstream to reduce the likelihood that we would have that kind of stuff happen in the future. So the Sentinel event review process was it was a really important process for us, and one that we've used again with a protest that went really poorly last May at one of our parks up here, and we're getting ready to do another review that's going to involve, like I said, the communication lags in the shooting that just happened a week and a half ago here. And I am skipping around a little bit because some of this is a little dated. One of the mandates that we have is we have to produce a work plan every January 1st. And that work plan has to be the result of collaborative conversations and work with our community police commission, our police stakeholders, and some of the other elected stakeholders that we work with. So we kind of start chatting with folks in October, figure out what the big issues are that we need to put on our work plan, and then we publish it. But we we try to leave room in that work plan so that if emergent work comes up, we can also work that into things. So I think when you all are thinking about it, like having an office that is mandated to produce certain reports for the public and a work plan, I think that's probably a really good idea to have it formalized like that. Here's a little bit more information on the annual surveillance usage reviews that we have to do. Back in 2024, we had 10 surveillance technologies that we had reviewed the previous year. And we were anticipating having about 8 more technologies. So it was starting to grow and be a pretty big burden on our office. But I think I mentioned that the city has streamlined the ordinance a little bit. And so we started doing sort of a risk analysis for surveillance technologies because there are technologies that have a higher risk of having an impact on communities that are historically over policed. There are technologies that are super low risk and probably shouldn't even be reviewed, like the little kind of robot phone thing that you can throw through a broken window in a hostage situation. Like technically that's considered a surveillance technology, but the likelihood that it's going to be used on a wide scale to violate civil liberties is really non-existent. So we started trying to prioritize the work in terms of focusing on things where there was a real risk to community and especially vulnerable communities. This is a bunch of recommendations that I'm not going to talk about right now. But one of the things that you want to make sure that you're thinking about is if you're building an office that is going to make findings and recommendations about the police department, that you have some sort of structured mechanism for having follow up for those recommendations, having tracking of implementation, and having some reason why recommendations are not implemented. So just making sure that you have a loop of follow through there. Community engagement, super important. It is really important to be responsive to what community cares about, and to make sure that you're able to communicate the work in a way that makes sense to community. And that is what I've got for that. So I'm going to stop sharing. I guess I have to end the show. All right.
Well, thank you, Dory. Did you want me or Kip to? What was your thing?
I think, yeah, just thank you so much for that presentation. I think now we just have a good bit of time for any Q&A that folks have. Okay. If anybody, including members of the public, you are welcome to raise your hand and get in the queue if you have any questions. So yeah, I'll just open it up for questions.
Yeah, and I know that was a lot, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time for it to marinate and for you'll leave this meeting and go, oh wait, yeah, maybe I should have asked about whatever. So I'm happy to come back and do follow up.
Well, you did a great job, Lisa, because what you actually have done is open up a whole world of differences inside the inside. Just where a lot of people don't see the areas of working through every piece of the bureaus working daily and how operations work from every aspect, even just in systems like electronics or tracking systems. We have noticed, or I have noticed down through the years, our community have always seen almost the whole picture as one. But when you're talking about what it is in the legal law professions of being able to actually understand use of force and other things that requires what this report, as well as the settlement agreement coming along the side and how it looks. These are some of the things, like I said, that I'm really appreciating how you're opening up this conversation with a lot of people who are already familiar, but those who have not been doing this for a long time. It gives a better sense of
Yeah.
I've seen 3 hands go up, and I believe Charlie was the first, and then I believe I seen Conrad and Gabby.
Yeah, Charlie, did you still want to ask a question? We saw your hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I hit that by accident, but I can kind of ask my first of multiple questions. And thank you for having this so much. This is a lot of good information. And FYI, I am feeling a lot better. Last time I was on here, I was not feeling well under the care of a trauma surgeon. So bear with me. But I heard you say how to maintain independence needs to be seriously community centered, but then community doesn't know the work. You need community members. I believe it was like need to know the workings of the in this case Portland Police Bureau, and so many of us who come in with lived experience, you know, some pretty intense lived experience as a witness to, or a victim of, or a target of, a survivor of police violence, across the board for many reasons. But we don't really know how the inner workings of the police are, with all that technical jargon that you're talking about. But nonetheless, our voices still we bring truth, and we bring evidence, and we bring wisdom. And so our voices are no less important to be involved in this than some who may have some knowledge of the inner workings. So how do you work with us who just have basically that streetwise stuff going on?
Yeah, thank you for that. And you know, I think I'm probably a little bit of a unique person. I think I mentioned that I'm from Tucson. I come from, definitely when I moved to Seattle, when I came up here to take this job, it was different for me than where I come from. I come from a place that's like 50 miles from the border with Mexico. I'm Mexican, and it was a very different environment. I also had, you know, interesting family struggles growing up. So I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective on things. But you know, um, community members are the experts about what is going on in community, what's important to them, what they want to see in their police department, how they want to be treated. And you know, I think one of the things that was interesting to me in moving up here is where I come from. It's very highly likely that like your cousin went to, you know, high school with my aunt and stuff like that. And so it is a community that knows each other. And I think when you know people, you care, and there's just a level of caring that you have to have a trusting relationship with your police department. That was a big struggle. That is a big struggle up here in Seattle. And so I think you have to just be cognizant of making sure that community is involved, and that there's a combination of people who know how to navigate the system, who know how to speak, you know, the system language, who know how to get things done within the system, but having it also informed by, sorry, my wife's coming in the door right now, so the dog's going to bark for a second.
Yeah, because
yeah, so you have to have that balance, right? You have to be able to, I mean, if community doesn't trust whomever is going to be in your inspector general's office, it doesn't work. And so you've got to have a person, you have to have a person who is and I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but that is able to build authentic relationships with community and then be able to take that and translate it into the system language and knowledge to get change, you know, and they can speak like both languages
Right.
essentially. So
Because we can share the results of
Yeah.
their behavior and their actions, you know, but it's so easily ignored or just it almost feels like they ask for people with lived experience, but they really don't want to hear us.
yeah, I can totally understand and appreciate that feeling, that perspective. And sometimes it feels like nothing's happening or like things are taking too long. And so, um, I wish I had like an easy answer for you, but I don't. But it's you have to have somebody in this position that can sit in discomfort, that can hear people, that can understand like the pain and the struggle and say, okay, now how do I do something about that? An example of that was the traffic stop work we did. Frankly, that was me getting tired of Black motorists, especially Black men, being killed needlessly when they're getting stopped for, expired tags or whatever. And it was like, we've got this recipe for disaster when an officer pulls somebody over. In the academy, they're trained that's the most dangerous thing you're ever going to come into. You don't know who's in that car. It's I think both sides will tell you it's dangerous, right? So how do we reduce the likelihood that that's going to happen, that officers are going to have contact with the motorist out there? Well, let's look at what people are being pulled over for. If it's something that's dangerous like drunk driving, reckless driving, super high rate of speed or something, sure. If it's something like expired registration, where essentially you're just sort of being an enforcement arm for the state, why are there other ways to enforce that without having officers and community have to have contact with each other, right? So we put together work groups, we worked with SPD and got SPD to stop pulling people over for like, a list of things that weren't really impacting safety, but we're creating the potential for somebody to be the victim of police violence, or for an officer to get hurt or killed at a traffic stop. So that's an example of saying, okay, what is a problem that is really impacting certain communities of color, right? And what can we do as a system to start chipping away at that? And I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
Well, it's part of it, and I have too many questions for right now, but I'd love for us, Portland Cop Watch to, I don't know, maybe get together with you.
I would love that. Yeah. Do you guys ever meet in person?
Oh yeah, all the time.
When the Pacific Northwest isn't on fire? Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to come down sometime for an in-person meeting if that would be more helpful.
Thank you.
Great question, Charlie. Charlie, the other thought is just being where you are right now, trusting the relationships that she said, because it is a community, they are community, we're community. And it takes this much time to get past the trauma to recognize how do we help the next person, because we can't just not have areas of where people don't believe on them. Conrad, I think you were the next.
Thank you, Pastor Wisner. Lisa, thank you for being here. I'll keep it short. I know there's a bunch of questions, but I just wanted to commend the work. I've been reviewing on your website a bunch of the audits. The irony is not lost on me reviewing the audits, but I'm noticing a trend over the last couple of years, particularly a lot of the reports you've released lately. When we're looking at the evaluation of bias review process, gender disparity, emergent detention, you all are actually including a lot of figures, graphs, charts. And I'm really keen on that for those of us here, because in order for us to advocate, data needs to be understandable. And it's really beautiful that you have the footnotes, the formulas, you're showing the work.
I got you.
But most people don't
It's
have that
boring.
patience. Most people don't want to go through a conveillance matrices
Yeah.
and break out the data. So is that a strategic move you all are doing, is really leaning into a lot more of the figures, the color coding, and making it more digestible so the data actually is actionable? And then I yield the rest of my time.
Yeah, you know, it's sometimes really hard to make an audit interesting and make things pop out to people. The city of Seattle as a whole has done like a usability project to try to make all of the products of the city of Seattle more understandable and readable for people who may have various you know, different abilities, like they may be vision impaired or whatever, that make the product easier to look at and read. We've just now finally started turning big audits into one pagers. And so we just did one on pursuits that's got some graphics and has the main takeaways and stuff on an audit we did of pursuits. I'm happy to send you our inaugural one pager if you guys want to take a look at it, because you have to have a way that people who are curious about what's going on or who care but don't have, you know, an hour or 2 hours or whatever to sit down and really, you know, do a deep dive into something so they can understand what it is we're doing and why it's important. So I'm happy to share that with you. Honestly, I think the King County auditor up here has been doing a great job, and we took inspiration from them of visually depicting their work so that you can look at, you know, a graphic and understand what they did, why they did it, why it's important to you, and what the result is.
Gabby?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I do have two questions. First, I just wanted to ask, so I saw you have like data analysts, you have auditors under your department. Like when you think of like right now, we've been looking at like use of force reports and the ops data. I would assume that here it's like those are, you know, somewhat, it seems like independent departments possibly are doing their own work within the police department in Portland. Is that work being done within the police department, like with the policy work, and then you do your own work and you come together? Or did you take on any departments when the inspector general was created?
No, it was created, it started with me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like me in an old abandoned credit union in the basement of City Hall. And then I hired a couple people who I felt like knew City of Seattle government, and we started from there, and we grew. You know, we only had 8 positions at that time. So I've just sort of like built a team knowing what we needed to, what capabilities we needed to have to kind of challenge SPD's data, because SPD has a very well-developed group of data scientists and people who do their data for them, you know, run their data systems, all that stuff. I felt like we needed to be able to go toe to toe with them on data, just, you know, so that we would know what the real deal was, and you know, we wouldn't be kind of captive to their interpretations of their data. So for me, that was a really important component of having oversight, having the ability to do in-depth analysis of all of the data points that you might want to look at within the police department to know what the real situation is. And so what we do now is, I think our data analysis capabilities are pretty well respected. And so we will do an analysis of something, whether it's, you know, our co-response care unit, you know, information about their calls, things like that. We'll put together a report, and then we'll go to SPD's data people and we'll say, okay, here's what our data shows. Check our math on this. You know, tell us if we're off on anything. And we're generally not, but we work with them to kind of check each other and make sure that we're both, you know, our numbers are representing what's truly going on so the community has transparency.
So yeah, that kind of just goes into my next question. Like in circumstances where I assume sometimes you might come to different conclusions. Like, how do you bring those conclusions together? And is the police force responsive to like your audit recommendations, especially if it's sort of contradicts their own?
Yeah, they're very responsive to our audit recommendations. And this comes from, relationship building isn't just important within community, it's also important to build relationships with the police department so that it's a collaboration. Nobody likes to have anything crammed down their throats. And so if an inspector general can also approach relationships with the people that they're providing oversight to, that is collaborative, that's a partnership, all we want collectively is to be better and to serve the community better. If you can agree that that's a shared goal that you have and work toward that, then what I found is SPD tends to be really generally pretty eager partners with us, because it means that they can. I think they're interested in improving too, and in continuing to evolve and have better relationships with community, do their work better, do it more safely, things like that. So if you can find common ground and use that to build, I think you tend to get buy-in that way. So they're very responsive to our recommendations. I like having them at the table. One, because you get real-time information about what's feasible in terms of what you want to recommend, what's not. And you also get their buy-in in the process at the time, so they can't come back later and say, well, you're making these recommendations, but we can't do that for whatever reason. If they're at the table going, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, then it becomes just a natural pathway to having the recommendation follow through into implementation, instead of, we've come up with this thing, now we're going to force you to do it, and then we're going to make sure that you comply. It's, that's just not a way that's, I think, a successful way to get police departments to acknowledge the need for change and to move in different directions. So it's worked for us, and hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you again. And Kip.
Yeah, thank you for all of this. I have a ton of questions, but I'll stay focused on my first and foremost. But I appreciate you being willing to keep continuing on this journey with us. I am curious, you started with yourself in an abandoned credit union, which is a great
Humble
story.
beginnings, yeah.
The staff that you started with were able to hire and then grow your department and reach and capabilities. I'm very curious about how that went about. Was it mandated through the consent decree? Was it the legislative branch that helped build and fund it? And that would be part A of the question, is how did you fund and build your organization? And I think part B to that was, I think you might have just answered some of it, but what kind of resistance or challenges did you have with the implementation, even though it was mandated initially, that being able to build a trust relationship where the work that you're doing is uh, by its nature sometimes adversarial, but not in a malicious way.
That was many parts to that question. Just in terms of how we built it, I knew that I had to start with some real solid work products, like some audits and some evaluations of the Seattle Police Department that would demonstrate that having an inspector general's office was a value add. So the first people, I got two people from city council. I managed to poach the chief of staff from the city council person who hired me, and somebody from the central staff who happened to be a lawyer and helped in drafting the 117-page ordinance that established
Wow.
my office. So like, she knew way more about what I was supposed to do than I did. And I think one of the things that has helped me is I'm very comfortable hiring incredibly smart people and letting them do their thing. And so I was really fortunate to get a couple of people right out of the gate who knew Seattle government in a way that I didn't. And then I got a couple of young auditors because it was a brand new shop who were really good at communicating their audit. So they were good auditors and good at communicating. So we started strong there. And then I mentioned that my background was in policing, and like I've been on the International Association of Chiefs of Police, their policy committee for going on 20 years now. So I, have a lot of relationships in law enforcement, kind of policy making. So I was able to also speak the language of the police department there. And, I had a couple of colleagues from my work with those organizations that are national. So I could speak the language there, speak the language in terms of community, and it just sort of gelled. I don't really know, um, any way to describe it, but in terms of the funding, it's been a process. And so one thing that you guys might want to pay attention to is finding some way, because independence is so important, but you're never truly independent if you have to go to the mayor and ask for money in the budget, or you have to go to council and ask for money in the budget. So if you guys are setting something up, having a structure where maybe funding for your accountability system is tied to police department staffing. So if the police department's growing, then the accountability budget is growing there, and nobody has to go begging for money to be able to do what they need to do, to hire the right people, hire enough people. I think that would be something that I would love to not have to do. I think that would really solidify our independence
Yeah.
there.
No,
And I
thank you
don't
for
know if
that.
I got even
No,
half
you
of
did
your
very well.
question, but
That was great. It was complex and deep, but you addressed what I was looking to understand. So thank you.
Those
yeah.
are great questions, Kip. Jorge, thank you for also Lisa being able to answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pastor Meiser. Thanks, Lisa, for the presentation. It was a lot.
It is a
But
lot,
I
yeah.
able to process. Same thing with everyone. I have like a bunch of questions, but I'll keep it to just one or two. For the recent OIG projects, I saw audit for youth access to legal counsel.
Mhm.
Is that audit public?
Yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah,
on the
it's on our
website with the
website. Yeah.
reports.
Yeah, we've recently been trying to make our website a less of a hot mess to find things
It looks,
on. So
yeah.
we're trying to like group them in things that might make sense to people. I have a data scientist who is just brilliant. She has come up with a way to that's going to make our stuff really easy to search, but we haven't implemented it yet. But you can look forward to that hopefully coming soon. But yeah, everything that we do is on our website. And if you see something or you have an interest in a topic area and you can't find it, just ping me, and I'm happy to either provide it to you or, help you out.
Okay. Yeah. And for my other I see that for your current priorities, I saw collaboration with SPD about like data transparency.
Mhm.
What I guess what steps or what are like the common tactics that your office is doing with collaborating with them? Because
Um,
you described like you guys have a decent positive relationship where you guys can actually communicate and do stuff. Here, it's a little bit more complicated with the threads. And so I wonder what are your like tactics if Portland was to have something similar to Seattle with an inspector general.
yeah, again, I think really important that your inspector general can go into the Portland Police Bureau's data and pull data and do its own analysis without having to ask for it. I think some of the biggest inconsistencies have been, and I'm not a data person and I don't want to get too wonky, but sometimes the way data can show up in something, like SPD may make certain assumptions about data they have, and maybe they don't share the assumptions they're making about data with the public. And so the public will look at their raw data, do an analysis, and then arrive at different numbers than SPD does. And just to kind of illustrate that in a real world way, the way they track uses of force, they will track them by individual officers. So you might have one call where 4 officers respond and 3 officers use force. That would show up as 3 uses of force, but it would be related to one call, right? And so you have to like, the assumptions are like the context that SPD might use to interpret data, but sometimes they don't share what that context is well enough, and so people don't understand. We've even gone in there and found that like they hadn't cleaned their data appropriately, and so they were arriving at way different numbers than we were. But then when you go back and you have conversations with them and say, hey, we're getting a different number for how many officer involved shootings you had that one year, what's going on here, and we can look at it and reconcile and figure out what happened. It's a way to kind of keep their numbers, I don't want to say honest, because that would suggest that I think they're doing something sneaky, and I don't think they are, but just, making sure that the assumptions we're making around data and the ways we're analyzing it are give the most accurate picture to community of what's actually happening. Did that answer your question, Jorge?
Yeah, no, it did. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jorge. Great response. Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Iona. I'm with League of Women Voters, and I was also a member of the Police Accountability Commission that designed the new accountability system we have. So I have 2 questions. One is, can you describe in a little more detail what it is you do to ensure that the Office of Police Accountability is doing its job the way it should? And then I'm also curious how you interface with the Seattle Police Commission, is that what they're called? The volunteer board.
Community Police Commission.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're actually not volunteer. Well,
they're not volunteers. Oh, sorry.
The commissioners are volunteers, but they have a city staff.
Okay.
That staff that. So, yeah. First of all, with the Office of Police Accountability, we are charged with making sure the investigations they do of officers are thorough, that they're unbiased, and they meet timelines, that they're timely. So we have 3 criteria, and we've got a whole kind of list of things that we look at to make that determination about whether it meets those 3 criteria. So the first time we interface with them is when a complaint comes in, they will do an assessment of it to decide, is this something that's appropriate for us to handle? Like, if somebody complains that a King County sheriff's deputy was rude to them, obviously we don't have jurisdiction. So they'll make these decisions at the outset about whether it's appropriate to investigate, what kind of investigation, whether they can resolve it by just watching body worn, or whether they need to do an expanded investigation and bring people in and interview them. So they make what we call a classification decision. We look at that to make sure that their decision is appropriate. If they say, oh, we think there's nothing here, we're just going to put it in this list and we're not going to do anything with it, we make sure that's an appropriate decision. And if we see that they need to do more work, or we think they should do a full investigation, then we can make them do that. So we make sure that initial decision making is appropriate. Then as they're doing their investigation and they finish it, we are assessing it to make sure that it's thorough, unbiased, and timely. So what happens then is we either fully certify it meets those 3 criteria, or we can partially certify it, like it was thorough, but they went way past the timeline or whatever. Once that investigation's done, then it goes to the director of OPA, and they make a decision about whether it violated policy and discipline. So we really have eyes on the investigation part. And that's just a really very abbreviated answer to the variety of things we do with OPA. But essentially, it's making sure their investigations are thorough.
Thank you, Debbie.
And then the
Police Commission,
the Community Police Commission, they have a city staff. They have a director And I think they've got 8 people that do community engagement, communications, admin stuff. And then they have a commission of 15 members that are appointed by either the commissioners themselves or by council members and the mayor. And so the commission, they kind of do community engagement. They offer input on SPD policies. Yeah. But we attend their meetings. We give regular updates to them. I meet with their director. Me and my deputy meet with the director and her deputy routinely. So,
do they ever suggest topics for audits that your office might? Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. In fact, they're one of the stakeholders that we take formal comments from them on our work plan, and we publish those with our work plan. So when people give us, feedback on what they want us to work on and whatnot, we make sure that we include that when we make decisions about our work plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
So,
you.
Gabby, we have you next, but Dory, we're doing a time check with you.
We are good on time. We have about 15 minutes left to chat.
Excellent. Great question so far, Gabby.
Thank you. You just said that you sort of like oversee the investigations. I guess what kind of standards do you use for those, or have you ever found any problems, and how do you solve those issues?
Absolutely. We solve them, we're on our third, during my tenure, I think our third OPA director now. And so what we try to do is, I think we've developed a way of offering critical feedback to them that doesn't feel like it's like there's a skill in offering critique without like telling people that they're not good at their jobs and stuff. And so I think the people that I have doing that particular part of our work are really good at communicating with them about deficiencies in their investigations, trying to work with them to get cases to a point where we can fully certify them. We're sort of a call in instead of a call out kind of organization. So we work collaboratively because our goal is a thorough investigation. And so, we provide kind of informal feedback through the investigation. Sometimes we provide formal written feedback, like we think you haven't tried hard enough to reach the complainant. We think you need to go back and re-interview the officer about XYZ that we don't think was appropriately addressed in the interview. So we'll give feedback in a variety of ways, but all of that shows up in we produce a work plan, and then we also produce an annual report. And so there's a whole section in our annual report about what we did with OPA in the past year, how many cases we fully certified, how many we didn't, reasons why we didn't fully certify. And then we also do quarterly updates with just kind of numbers, to give people a sense of like what our level of concurrence is with OPA, and when we think they're not getting it right. So they know that it's going to be reported.
Okay, so you look at their investigation standards and then say, we either think you're in compliance with this or we don't think you're in compliance with like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have our own standards for like what something looks like when it's thorough, and what something, what things might indicate bias. And we assess it against their investigation protocols and our own standards for assessing it to decide if it's thorough, unbiased, and timely.
Thank you again, Gabby. I believe it was Jorge.
Like Jorge's got his
Jorge, then we have Barb, and then Charlie. I think Barb, you haven't asked the question yet. Why don't we try you first, and then Jorge and Charlie.
Wait, did I get to jump ahead of Jorge too?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. I'm thinking about more like just factual kind of questions, like the timeline about how your office grew. I think I heard you say you started with 8 people,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering sort of like not only how your office grew and how you knew how to right size it with the police department and the size of the police department. And then also, I think I'm hearing you say that you wish the funding was done independently somehow. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
just
that would be interesting because we already have 5% going to the one board. So I wonder if it would be like another 5% or the same in equivalent amount. There we go. That's a good word.
yeah, I mean, you know,
Would
without
like-
looking at Portland Police Bureau's budget, like I don't know what number is appropriate, but I think having something like that, like a fixed percentage, or you know, if Portland Police Bureau's budget is X number of dollars, and having the IG's budget be X percent of that, you know, makes sense to me, so that it's an it's a fixed number that can kind of go up and down with staffing, something that is tied to a more objective criteria than just having to go make a case to elected people, because those relationships change. um, you know, they can be impacted by so many things that it really can start uh, having an impact on independence. And so I think it makes sense to have funding be tied to something that's not relationships with people. In terms of how I figured out how to right size it, I don't know that I really have. I think if you look at our work plan, we push out a ton of work. But if you gave me 10 more auditors, I'd be pushing out, you know, 5 more audits a year. So it just all depends. We can certainly use more staff and do more things, but there's also a point at which the police department can't keep up with all of the things that we're recommending that they do. And so I think, you know, you guys just have to decide what feels right for your community, because it will vary, and the things that are important to you in Portland and that are possible with Portland Police Bureau are probably different. You know, community priorities might be different.
We have about 4 minutes, and there I'm going to ask Jorge and then Charlie to be a wrap up there.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So, um, you said you couldn't really give an example about a OPA like classification or like a conflict investigation, and you mentioned like it's more of like a quicker response. Is there like a past example that yeah, is there like something in the past that you've done that you could use as an example?
Are you talking about like OPA conflict investigations, or are you talking about how long an audit takes versus doing a quicker turnaround with a review?
Both.
An example of an OPA conflict is, I'll just give an example of the director. We had a situation where somebody was making an allegation that the OPA director was violating traffic laws and city policies using his city provided vehicle. Because I didn't think it was really proper for us, me as a department director, to investigate another department director. We hired an outside investigation firm and had them do an investigation, and then sent that investigation to the mayor's office. So, you know, if an investigator working at OPA is alleged to have used excessive force or was rude to somebody, OPA investigators can't really investigate themselves, and I think the public doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in that. So my office would take that, and then we would sort of we would take on the role of the OPA and do that investigation of individual misconduct, whereas usually we're focused on systemic. And then an example of doing a review versus an audit, I would say the traffic stop issue was a good one. Like, I felt there was some urgency in moving that work forward quickly and not waiting for a whole audit on what traffic stops looked like, and trying to, sort of tease out that really hard thing to, like, showing bias, I think, is one of the hardest things to get police departments to get behind and accept as a reason for doing things. If you come at it from, this is just not safe, it's less safe for community members and for officers, so there's a safety reason, that was different. And so I think in that way an audit didn't make sense, but sending the chief a letter saying, hey, this is a problem throughout the nation, it's a problem here, we want to do some work on it, we want to work with you, and doing work that was much more quick and was, in that case, collaborative with the police department, got us quicker results.
Okay.
And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did. Just processing it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It really is.
Charlie? Are you going to still answer? Your hands up, Charlie, or was it? It's down now.
There we go. Okay. So I'll try to be brief. When you said, and of course you could see community is my number one focus. Community needs appropriate connections. And so, we're often dealing with traumatized police officers and traumatized community members. And I was on the Police Accountability Commission to help create this. And one of the things was my main concern too was a community navigator that takes the complaints from community and to make sure they were kept informed from beginning to end at all times. I also concerned that they may not be reporting a lot of things because of this trauma. And I'm just wondering how have you dealt with, if at all, I forget exactly how I was going to word this, but the mental health of police officers and to understand the mental health of the community that's being affected by them.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples of things in our work where we've done that. You really should talk to the Office of Police Accountability. They use complaint navigators to help community members track their individual officer misconduct complaints and to kind of help communicate that. So I'd be happy to connect you with one of their complaint navigators. I think when we have really tried to work with around trauma has been 2020 with the protests and the violence that was here in Seattle. We actually used Peacemaking Circle as a communication tool with the group of officers and community members that were on our panel. So, I think it was important to acknowledge kind of the shared harm and trauma and everything, and come together to talk about things in a place where you were hearing and respecting the respective experiences and trauma and harm, right, that had happened. And so when we have those situations where we want to bring police officers and community members together to problem solve, we've used tools like that, like Peacemaking Circle or some sort of communication facilitator who can help people develop a deeper understanding of each other as individuals, and to develop an atmosphere where you can really hear each other and respect each other's experiences. So, I don't think many governments really do that well at this point.
No. True.
Yeah.
Well, we have Gabby just stuck her hand up at the
I'm sorry. I know we're running out of
last minute.
Last question. I just want to say, it seems like you've come up with a lot of ideas. It seems like you're sort of generating these ideas yourself. Are there any cities you do look to?
Good question.
I pull from a lot of things. I know folks from all over, and I think there are things that work in various places. I know that Portland Police Bureau is developing for crowd management, like a poet program, dialogue policing. That originated with my office as well in 2020. Columbus PD took that concept and just built a phenomenal group of officers who are so good at communicating with community. So, like I'll look to things like that have happened and say, we need to continue to encourage that here. I pull pieces from all over, but this is such an emerging field. And frankly, the use of inspectors general in police accountability is very new. I think I was one of the first ones. They were down in LA. I think there was an IG in Chicago and maybe in New Orleans, but it's becoming more accepted as a way to do police oversight. So I think we're all just figuring it out right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These have been very good, informed thoughts. I'm hoping that what we have learned and seen is a tremendous amount of respect of what it has done all these years, from all the reports that we have seen, all of the meetings or court appearances from every groups that have been involved. But also say, Lisa, your history and long time engagement is really evidence in your experience and verse all the way across the board. And I thank Dory, and I think the whole group thank Dory for allowing you to come in and give us a perspective of this type of responsibility that's going to take a huge amount going forward from where we have been in the past. I also want to commend our independent monitors who are here today. We have Mark and Mr. Romez, who has those same experience and who has done such a lot as each one of these areas of what we have had relationships with them as well. So Dory, with that being said, as they say in the ballpark, is back at you.
Yeah, I think
if I could just say thank you, Pastor Weisner. I really appreciate you all for giving me the time to talk to you. And I also really appreciate the thoughtful approach that you all are taking to building accountability in your city. And like I said, please feel free to use me, my office, as a resource. Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. We would love to keep the lines of communication open. And
Great.
yeah, again, appreciate your time and all the information so much.
Or at least I'm gonna say, being transparent as I always am, you brought more than I expected.
Yeah, I was packing a little heat here with all of this. It's a huge endeavor, and I think when I hire somebody, it probably takes them a good 6 months to really figure out what we're doing. They kind of walk around the office and nod and everything like that, but it takes a while even doing the work for it to, like, the magnitude of it's pretty big.
I've been on
Absolutely.
every aspect of it, as far as what you've heard from Charlie, I sit on the review board here, and that's why I did tremendously think that the partnership is community, without a doubt, 100%. But it has to have the perspective of understanding what a shooting is looking like, and the use of force as being enforced, the laws and everything that was there. Because it's more than just emotional feelings of how this laws and applies what it is to come along to make a better bureau. But it will take community to do that, going back to, I think it was Gabby's question, or someone who was saying earlier, or Charlie, how do we don't feel that we're overlooked? Our trauma is important.
Yeah.
And many years ago, I'm gonna give back, Dory, is where that as a African American man myself, I had no trust with police. But once I got involved and I've seen the working elements, I have seen a good side of policing as well as a bad side. But I've always seen a common good here in our city of people down through the years trying to make it better. And this group here, is tremendously one of those offsprings of the work that community has brought. Sorry, Dory.
No problem. So yeah, and I will just add, it was interesting, Lisa, hearing you discuss how your work intersects or is very closely aligned with the accountability system in Seattle. As folks may know, Portland is in the process of standing up our new accountability system. So these are all really germane things to think about, and I expect this will be just the start of the conversation for this group. And I know a lot of other parties around the city are interested in the idea of an inspector general working in tandem with that accountability system in some way or another.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll just transition real quick here to our open public comment portion of the meeting before we conclude. So any community members who would like to share comments either related to this agenda or anything else you would like to share with the committee, please raise your virtual hand.
Hey, Dory.
Yes.
I did see National Night Out with some offices that were in the chat. So I'm just highlighting this week where we will be doing a lot of community things such as those National Nights Out as a reminder to many.
Yeah, I still invite anyone from the public or PCCEP to raise your hand if you have any comments. But as we're waiting, Iman, do you want to quickly share the events that are in the queue for this week
Yeah,
that PCCEP
absolutely.
will be at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Pastor Weisner, thanks for bringing up the National Night Out this Friday from 4 to 7 at Normandale Park for National Night Out for D3. So definitely looking forward to that one. So please come on out to that. And then Saturday, D1 picnic at Park Lane Park from noon to 3. And same for Sunday from noon to 3, D2 picnic at McCoy Park as well. So those are the upcoming events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the different districts.
Excellent. All right, not seeing any additional public comment. Just give it like 20 more seconds here. Don't want to cut anyone short.
Can I welcome Go Get Your Child Left Behind, Lori Palmer, one of our community leaders who first time I've seen in PCCEP.
Thank you. I've been here before.
And in person as well, but it's great to see.
Yeah, I did post something in there from me that the
Yes.
mothers want to be more connected and have a voice at the table.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we will get you out of here 2 minutes early. So let's take a look at what's
Can I
next.
say something? Tia mentioned the pastor had passed away. I know the pastor, and I'm trying to figure out where his service is going to be. I text her in the inbox, but she hasn't answered.
Does anyone know?
What pastor
Tia,
was?
she's the one that
What was the pastor's name, Laura?
Pastor Pratt. I mean, what is his name? Corey. Tia put it in her message, his whole name.
Corey Pritchett.
Yeah. Okay. So where is his service going to be?
Let me look at my calendar.
And I sent you my number too.
Okay. I know, I was wondering if you're going to be there. Okay, here it is. It's at 21, here, I'll write it. 2120. It didn't have a place. On the flyer, it just said this, 2120 Northeast Tillamook
Tillamook, okay.
Street.
And it's Saturday at what time?
3 to 4.
3 to 4. Okay, I'll try to find the church. But yeah, and I did send you my number.
Okay, good. I will send you a text too. And
okay,
because I was thinking I'd see you and I want to make sure we connect more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Gonna be rescheduled some big community engagement. Should be like a youth community engagement. It's on August 18th at Green Big Plaza in Southeast Portland, and anyone to join us on our website. We'd love to see some familiar faces. With that, I think I'll just well, Kim, Pastor Russell, you want to kind of sign off for us here?
Sure. Well, thank you for everybody being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Lisa, if you're still around. You can learn more about PCCEP at portland.gov/PCCEP. And we always welcome feedback, and you can fill out our form at PCCEP comments or email us through PCCEP emails. Sorry, preface with tinyurl.com. But thank you, everybody. It was a great conversation. This was super, super helpful.
Thank you guys. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Have a great
everyone.
night. Try
Good
not
night,
to breathe
everyone.
too deeply.
That's the plan.
Everybody be safe.
Thanks,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Take care.
Good night.